everybody, and welcome to the world Wahine. This is Kaylani, and this is your astro forecast for this upcoming week so you can work with the energy of the week. So let's jump right on in there because we got some yummy stuff happening for this week, starting with Mercury conjunct Neptune in the sign of Pisces. So we are not done with water. We're still in the water. We're in the water with our emotions. We're literally in the water with all of the floods. Pipes burst outside in one of the mainline pipes, and I had water seeping up in my kitchen like a couple of days ago. This transit, everything's okay, nothing got wet, but also just be careful, protect your water, protect your tech around water, protect your emotional space too. That's really going to be important during this time. But Mercury, typically having to do with communication, with things that are going back and forth, with commerce, with our minds and how our minds work, is in the sign of Pisces. And it's fall right now, not necessarily the happiest place because it's not able to be its kind of anal, like back and forth, airy Mercury self. It's in this abyss of like emotion and creativity and spirituality and all of that. Neptune, our planet of imagination, creativity, of other worlds, a facade of putting on a mask, and it's not really who the person is behind there. It's very Phantom of the Opera type of energy. I feel is very Neptunian. So we're perfecting that today on the 29th. We're going to be feeling this energy into the 31st. And you're going to feel some heightened intuition, inspiration, but things are going to be still unclear and a little bit muddy with that. So some of the positive things that can come out of that, as I've been like saying, I've been preaching to the back of the choir, that this is such a great time for creatives, for creative people, for people who are writing, for filmmakers, or people who do visual arts, whether that be photography or videography or anything where there is visuals, or creating things where there is metaphor, where there is poetry, where there is anything that is symbolic. This is the time. It's a beautiful time to do that. For storytellers or people who talk about the gods or talk about myths, wonderful energy for all of that. You might be feeling very drawn to spirituality and to like meditation, or to starting a yoga practice, to mysticism, to getting a tarot reading, to having your astrology chart read. All of that stuff is present, and I do that, of course. So hit me up. But you might feel drawn to those things, or even just like being able to decipher codes, or like seeing things, or, maybe feeling the presence of someone that has, passed on, or feeling spirits or things like that. That might be very prevalent at this time. There's a lot of kind of hyperbole though with this energy. I feel like it's a lot like Big Fish. You guys know I love to talk about movies. It was directed by Tim Burton, a director that I really like a lot. I'm not going to go into it because I want you guys to see it. I don't want to spoil it. But it's essentially about a father who tells these like fantastical stories to his son, and his son kind of goes on this journey to try to figure out whether any of these things were true, that his father told him, in a way to kind of sort of get closer to his father, and finds out that sometimes, there's a lot of magic in the world, and sometimes we tell tall tales, but there's a kernel of truth in them. But it's still beautiful, the journey to kind of get there, essentially. So there is that like kind of beautiful quality to that, someone is telling stories or telling tales that make you feel good, that make you feel better, that inspire you to do something, but it might not necessarily be true. At what point does an untrue story become detrimental to the masses, when you're kind of telling people something that makes them feel good, but it's actually not the reality? So those are all kinds of things that we're going to be dealing with right now. There can also be a flood of emotion, a flood of just too much of everything. You have that when you have all of this kind of watery energy. So if you're feeling like you're picking up so much, you're holding a lot of space, make sure that you wring out your sponge. A sponge can only absorb so much, right? So once it's full, it has to wring itself out so it can absorb more. That's more information, that's more emotions, that's more love, that's more everything. So make sure you're giving yourself a nice ring, and then you can absorb more should you choose to. Some of the more challenging things that can happen with that, as I just said, be careful of the water, be careful of your tech around water, and just like accidents with tech and water. Have this, Mercury and Pisces, and Mercury and Neptune are having this conversation, which can be kind of contentious at times when it's conjunct, feeling emotionally flooded, like the dam bursting open, and it's just kind of sort of finally coming out, which makes so much sense because Mercury's about to go into Aries. So the dam has been holding back the flood waters, and Mercury goes into Aries on the 3rd. It's like, yeah, just out there, but we're going to talk about that, towards the end. Again, feeling like you don't have all of the information, feeling like things are not exactly very clear, not knowing where you stand. It can be very self-deceptive as well, lying to yourself, not being truthful to yourself, not really saying to yourself the truth. We do that a lot to make ourselves feel better, to get us over the hump. We just live in a fantasy. We kind of listen to other people's lives and tell ourselves that same lie. And then if we repeat the lie enough, we start to believe it, typically. So we just want to be careful that we're not deceiving ourselves, because that's something very easy to do in this like Piscean energy. This could be a time where you're really going through some deep emotional things. So if you're feeling really heavy, especially because the mind is in a watery place, it's watered down, it's bogged down, it's full with so many emotional things, and the things that you're thinking are creating a deep emotional response in you. So if you need to get some support and reach out to people, reach out to professionals, please do that, because this could be a time of extreme mental confusion and depression for some people. And you might vacillate between, both. Like you can have some like positive parts of this aspect and then hit the real negatives too, which is why I always like to tell both. The next aspect that we have happening is the Venus and Sun is sextiling Saturn. That we're going to feel with Venus on the 30th, with the Sun on the 31st. And that's going to be going until, with Venus, the 1st of April, April Fool's Day, and then the 3rd with the Sun. So Venus stuff always has to do, the way I'm breaking this down essentially is our relationships, has to do with the things that have to do with other people in our lives that we're in relationship, we're in partnership, we're in business with, we are in school with, our teammates, anybody that is on a team or not on our team, or just a person outside of ourselves, essentially. Sun stuff has to do with ourselves and who we are and how we look at ourselves and the things that we do, and ego and all of those things. So whenever we have Saturn in play, Saturn is about kind of rules, it's about structure, it's about old systems that work, sometimes old systems that need to be broken down, but then they're always replaced with a new system too. Sextiles are typically positive, more positive aspects, but you do have to put in the work in order to reap the benefits. So I kind of like to associate it with like, coal. It's like pressed really hard and then it becomes this like beautiful diamond, or even just like a raw crystal, which some people love them. I love raw crystals too. But when you polish it up and everything, it's like nice and shiny and you wear it as jewelry and so forth. So with Venus, our relationships and our partners and all of that, gaining stability in our relationships. For some of us, our relationships have been cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Let's just be honest. And that can be like our relationships with, partners, with lovers, with spouses, with husbands, with our children, with wives, with just anybody that you are in a relationship with. Some of those have been just not on the best terms, and you're trying to find a way to work through things a very systematic way. It's just not flowing. And it's been a long time coming. It's been something that's just been building and building and building. And so now is a time to kind of recreate that structure, to create a new foundation, to have some good boundaries, some structure to support your relationship. Super duper duper important right now. Could also mean something really kind of outside of ourselves, like refurbishing an old thing, like an old building. It could be that's kind of getting a renovation. It could be like a renovation of an idea that you had, something that you wanted to do, but it didn't quite work out, and you're just kind of dusting that off and you're pulling it back out to see how you can rework it in a different way. It has a lot to do with like finding stability in your finances too, in regards to your relationships as well. So if you're in if it's a family business, or you are in a partnership or in a business, something like that, and the finances have been like kind of not really keeping track of the books, or not really sure how that's going, it's really like putting in a system that's good for you and creating some structure for yourself so that you can be successful and do the things that you want to do. And again, these are like long time coming. Like you were kind of bootstrapping these ideas and things, and it's like, okay, we need to just stop at, I was going to say hammer time, but like, but you know what I mean? Like we have to stop and we have to like put everything, together and really write this out and be kind of detailed about it, which is kind of, sometimes people feel like isn't the sexy work, but it's actually the most important, because it's like you need that foundation and then you can have good sexy time with it. It could also mean like working with an elder, working with somebody, especially if it's in your relationship, getting some help, getting some counseling with an older person who's like a mentor to you. It could be about connecting to like a father figure or one of your kupuna, which is like an elder or a grandfather. If these people are not alive, it could be talking about them. It could be about, just talking with a family member and bringing them up and talking about the lessons and things that you learn. Even when people pass on, don't think that just because they pass on, you still don't get something from them, because it's in talking about the memories memories of them and the stories of them and looking at their pictures and what it invokes in you actually can be very influential in your life. So you might, come across an old photo or talk about, like a family member or something and really get something beautiful out of that. Some of the more challenging aspects with this could be just feeling antisocial, feeling like, awkward in relationships, not really wanting to, connect with other people, a meddling parent, like an older parent who kind of is like super duper involved in the relationship or the situation and it's not helping at all and they really need some good boundaries in your life or in your relationship. And just also feeling kind of disconnected from people. When it comes to the sun, some of the things that are positive about this aspect with the sextile to Saturn is you can have increased organization and just really kind of getting your space and self together, being very direct, having really good boundaries with all of the people you're in relationship with, enjoying your solitude and your alone time, which so many of us don't do, and just making really good long-term choices for yourself in a financial way. Some of the challenges with that can come a lot of loneliness. So sometimes Saturnian work just doesn't feel like it's like always the easiest or the most fun, and it's a lot of laying down structure that it won't reap its benefit until the end, so it can feel very isolating. Like it's like, oh, we're gonna go to the beach, we're gonna do this, and what are you doing? You're like, my taxes. Like maybe you'll get a return and then you can go spend money and have fun and do all those things. So it's a little bit of a delayed gratification sometimes when it comes to Saturnian things. It could just feel like an enormous amount of responsibility, and that's just kind of sort of I'm like holding it down for everybody and my whole family, and I'm trying to do this thing and I just feel so like the weight of the world on my shoulders. You can feel tired, sometimes fatigued, and it can just be like being too strict with yourself and not enjoying your life. Next up, and our last aspect for this week is Mercury entering Aries. So actually a change of sign. So Mercury has been in Pisces where it's been like, because it's bogged down in emotion and symbolism. And now Mercury is in Aries. So this is interesting because Mercury isn't like exalted. It's not at home or anything in Aries, but it likes being in Aries because they both share this kind of youthful, exuberant kind of energy between the two of them. Now they also have something called mutual reception right now. And that's because Mercury is in the sign of Aries, which is Mars's home. And because Mars is in the sign of Gemini, which is Mercury's home. So they're basically the two planets are like in each other's home. So they have this kind of relationship that's going to be good for them for this like conversation that they're having over the next 2 weeks, which is basically activate and get things done. Think it and then do it. And it's going to be a great time for that. So Mercury, again, how we assimilate information. Mars is how we take action. So it's about our curiosity, having messages and information going back and forth and educating ourselves. Some of the positive things about this will be just having a very youthful and playful energy and a very kind of creative, fun, and active way of getting things done. It's very reactive energy, so it throws something out and you're throwing something right back to it. It's very hands-on, tactile learning. So I learn through doing. I'm doing something, like I'm saying what I'm doing and then I'm writing it down. It's that kind of like, don't just tell me the visual, I can't read it. I actually have to like get my body involved in it. It's called kinesthetic learner. That's like kind of this kind of energy. And if you have this natally in your chart, you probably are very much a kinesthetic learner. Like I have to just physically get myself in it to do it. It's about clear thinking and making really decisive action and being very direct communication. All of the emotion, everything that you were holding in when Mercury was in Pisces, it's like, ta-da! When it's in Aries, it's going to just come right out and be out there for everyone to see and to feel and to touch. And sometimes it's going to feel like it was way too much information, like big time TMI. It's fast acting. The exchange is lightning fast. It's like you think something and you do it. You're not even really like thinking and letting it mull over like typically it is. When I would say Mercury would be in an air sign, it really like kind of sits in the brain and it goes round and round and round and round, And when it's in a fire sign like Aries, it like sits in the brain and it goes right out the mouth, and it's like the action happens right away. Really great time for people who are business owners or who are entrepreneurs, because you are going to think about doing something for your business and then you're going to act on it. It'll be like a right away kind of active energy. So that's going to be really good. So that should be really supportive for you in the next 2 weeks. You're going to feel like, like really stepping up and self-promoting. If you're a little bit more shy, a little bit more introverted, this could feel like a time where, ride that energy to be your extroverted self. If there's a couple of things you wanted to get out there, if you wanted to launch some things for your business or talk about your business or do some kind of marketing, this would be a great time to do that. Just put yourself out there. You know, the sun is exalted, you know, right now in Aries, so all eyes on you anyway. And so then you're actually able to speak, and so people will hear you and see you. So it'd be a great time for that. For some of the more challenging aspects of this, impatience, just never known to be very patient. Very curious, but just not very patient. So things are just going to come out like, are we done yet? You know, like that kind of, you know, energy where, you know, or like you're sitting in something and someone's like, you know, and you're like, wow, I can't believe that person just like auditory. I mean, like everybody feels like you're tired of the meeting, right? But then someone's just like, you know, and you're like, wow. Big picture ideas, not wanting to deal with the details, just like no details, which means that if you're going to be signing any contracts or getting involved in anything or making any travel plans or anything like that, just be careful. You'll see, you'll be like, ooh, that flight to Hawaii or that flight to wherever, let me activate on that or buy this car or this deal, and you didn't read the, you know, all of the details, and then suddenly it wasn't at all what you thought it was, and you kind of like impulse bought something. Just be careful, read all the details with that, because you're just going to want to just do it, and it's like, read it. Being more combative, somebody says something, you're gonna say something back. Keyboard warrior time. Like you guys are gonna be coming out of the woodworks with like, you know, so just be careful. I, for one, because I can be a keyboard warrior, probably gonna stay off social media, like not on Facebook at all, because I know myself, too much fire in my chart. You know, saying harsh things, saying mean things, no filter, just whatever. Don't ask unless you want an answer. And try your best to answer in a nice way, but don't ask unless you want to answer during this time period, because people will give it to you. You know, you gotta be, you know, if you ask, you gotta be prepared for what you're gonna get. You want to also be very careful about travel related accidents too. Mercury is like kind of like all about travel and short distance travel, whether that be airport, whether that be like a car travel or any kind of, you know, those types of things. Whenever Aries is involved with that Mars energy, there can be, you know, just people are moving fast, the vehicles are moving fast, and accidents do happen. It does happen. So you just want to be careful about that. Gossip, lies, just negative talk that is mean can be all around and chatter. So one thing to do is to not participate in that, you know, and then it won't get bigger. And just if you hear about it, be careful in your response to it, because that can also make it bigger and just going back and forth and back. Because again, this is Mercury, so things like to go back and forth and back and forth. So the best thing to do is to cut it off. You know, you might have to eat the negative thing that someone says, but if you keep serving it up, they're going to serve it right back. And so if you want to have a nice verbal aggressive volley with someone, this is the time to do it. If you don't want to do that, just cut it off. Just don't play ball. Don't play ball. And also just feeling like a lot of energy, but then kind of petering out towards the end. So measure your energy, measure your days. You know, you might start the day with like, I'm going to do 100 things. And then after your third thing that you've given 110%, you're like, okay, I'm tired. I don't feel like doing anything else. So just measure your time. Make sure you're taking a lot of breaks and stuff in between that. And we'll be talking about this too, because it'll be with us for the next 2 weeks. So that is your astro forecast for this week. Thank you so much for joining. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at The Wild Wahine. If you are interested in getting a birth chart reading, so you can just be like, how does this have anything to do with me in a very specific way, like where all of these planets are in your houses and what, you know, section of your life, you can definitely reach out to me at www.thewildwahine.as.me, and we can look at your birth chart and give you some insight into that and how best to work with these energies. If you're interested in a tarot reading, you can also find me at that information. If you guys have any questions, just leave it below. Be sure to tag your friends, subscribe, and like the page, and I will see you guys later on this week. Aloha.